On the heels of his battle with Congressman John Lewis on this MLK Day, Donald Trump met behind closed doors with Martin Luther King III, the son of the civil rights icon.
Isn't there something that just cuts to your core when you hear the president-elect refer to John Lewis as all talk and no action? I mean, nothing could be further from the truth, isn't that right?
No, absolutely. I would say John Lewis has demonstrated that he's action. As I said, things get said on both sides in the heat of emotion. And at some point, this nation, we've got to move forward.
But it was only a brief reprieve from the controversies swirling around his inauguration. The incoming 45th president is slamming German Chancellor Angela Merkel for allowing Syrian refugees into her country.
I had great respect for her. I felt she was a great, great leader. I think she made one very catastrophic mistake, and that was taking all of these illegals, taking all of the people from wherever they come from, and nobody really knows where they come from.
Again. Come here, Victoria. Look, come here. Stand over here. Go over here behind the dumpster. Stand behind the dumpster. You feel? Right here. Come on. All the damn police.
On a beautiful Sunday morning, the steps of the Capitol were bustling with activity. In just days, these seats will be full, with hundreds of thousands expected for the inauguration of President-elect Donald Trump. Various military members and congressional and Trump staffers did a rehearsal on Sunday, with U.S. Army Sergeant Major Greg Lowry standing in for the 45th president. Trump's inauguration comes after a divisive election, so divisive that about 30 groups have gotten permits to protest before, during, and after the inauguration.
No justice!
No peace!
On Saturday, about 2,000 mostly black protesters rallied near the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial.
No Trump!
Then on Sunday, dozens of protesters marched through the district, promising to keep their demonstrations up every day. A promise that will likely follow the president all the way to the White House.
No KKK, no fascist USA, no Trump!
The mother of Trayvon Martin is with us. The mother of Eric Garner is with us. The brother of Walter Scott. That's why we marching. We won't let them down.
image. We didn't want it to be, you know, super anti-Trump. We didn't want people to be hateful. It had to be something that was peaceful and unifying and involved everyone.
As the inauguration date approaches, security becomes a more important issue, much more important.
Except neutrons. The neutrons are what we'll find in a nuclear weapon or an improvised nuclear weapon.
The responsibility of bomb technicians during the inauguration event are to identify anything that may be an explosive threat.
This will filter out particular threats that are in the air, like anthrax or any type of other biological.
On Inauguration Day, every seat in here will be filled and the room will be full of activity.
This is the Bureau's Nerve Center, where the focus is counterterrorism.
How has the threat picture changed since 2012?
We've seen a shift away from sort of the large, overseas, directed, more complex type of terrorist attack to the idea of the lone actor.
The FBI's priority is moving tips and intelligence on a second-by-second basis. The Multi-Agency Command Center, or MAC, is led by Secret Service.
There's even a utility problem. The lights go out in one of the ballrooms, for example. Everyone gets word of that immediately, and we know who is going to respond to that.
We will have FBI representatives in their command posts, and we'll have the full complement of communications.
We can get out in front of things very quickly so they don't mushroom.
As the scaffolding goes up, the plan is checked and double-checked. More than 28,000 security officials are protecting 100 square blocks, stretching from the Capitol to the White House and beyond. 5,000 National Guard troops are on duty with 3,000 police officers.
How much do you rely on this?
We rely on this very heavily.
The FBI will use GPS technology to map the location of agents as they move throughout the crowds. And this monitor provides a bird's-eye view of them all. Drones are banned in D.C. airspace, and the FBI won't hesitate to act.
We want people to know that we do maintain capability to detect and defeat devices of that type.
Investors skittish after President-elect Donald Trump said he would target companies over drug prices and that he was ready to unveil a plan to repeal Obamacare. Investors were also nervous about what his policies will mean to world trade, according to Recon Capital's Kevin Kelly.
A lot more nervousness, especially as you've seen other world leaders come out and say, hey, we're not going to just fold, we're not going to redo these trade agreements, you know, we're going to really focus, and you've got nationalistic and protectionist policies at the forefront.
Morgan Stanley shares fell even though its profit doubled in the fourth quarter thanks to a surge in trading activity. Walmart stock rose after the retailer said it would create 10,000 jobs in the United States this year. General Motors says it will invest $1 billion in its factories in 2017. The top automaker also says it will move some of its parts production from Mexico to the United States. Turning to Europe, British American Tobacco has agreed to a $49.4 billion takeover of U.S. rival Reynolds American, creating the world's biggest listed tobacco company after it increased an earlier offer by more than $2 billion. Deutsche Bank has signed a $7.2 billion settlement with the U.S. Department of Justice over its sale and pooling of toxic mortgage securities in the run-up to the 2008 financial crisis.
And literally obliterate.
Here we are, the Russian hackers.
Russian hackers.
Russian hack.
Russian hacking.
Russian hacker.
We're going to tell you the whole truth because from now you, the dear CIA, NSA, and FBI, won't be able to do anything about it.
I won. I mean, I became president.
Nice try with the report.
Total disaster.
But you failed to find the most important element. We don't need to hack Trump's Twitter as CNN suggests.
You are fake news.
We hacked Donald Trump himself. Do you remember him praising Putin for not implementing counter-sanctions? That was Putin praising himself with Trump's hands. Every American politician knows the more sanctions, the better. New sanctions.
Additional sanctions.
Increases in sanctions.
So, now, Trump is ours. As soon as your president does something you don't like, you'll shout Russian hackers.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
And you, the guys in intelligence, you still haven't discovered the main thing.
How did we manage to hack more than 60 million Americans who simply chose to kick out the establishment?
President-elect Trump harshly criticizing the United Nations after last month's passage of that resolution condemning Israeli actions. And also questioning American funding of the UN. The world body gets more money from the United States than any other country by far.
Brexit was a vote of no confidence in experts and elites. It was a sense that we want our country back, we want our values back, we want to control our own future. And so even if there are uncertainties, I'd rather go with that than continue on this path that is making me feel scared about my job and that I'm losing control of my life.
WikiLeaks leaker Chelsea Manning has had her 35-year prison sentence commuted by President Obama. Manning, who identifies as female, has spent nearly 7 years in an all-male military prison at Fort Leavenworth. Manning pleaded guilty in 2013 to sending hundreds of thousands of sensitive diplomatic and military files to WikiLeaks. She's been incarcerated since 2010. Manning has struggled to access treatment for her gender dysphoria in prison and attempted suicide twice. Advocates say her sentence is unfairly harsh. The commutation was among 273 acts of clemency Obama announced on one of his last days in office. The president granted clemency to nearly 1,600 people during his terms. Most of them were nonviolent drug offenders. Earlier in January, WikiLeaks tweeted that its leader, Julian Assange, would submit to U.S. extradition if Manning were freed. There are no formal charges filed against Assange, but he is wanted for questioning in a Swedish rape case.
Police say a gunman opened fire inside a nightclub at a resort in Mexico just south of Cancun, killing at least 5 people.
The leader of Austria's Freedom Party, the FPO, has called for a crackdown on what he calls the Islamization of the country.
We need a ban on foreign funding of Islamic unions. We need to deport criminals and those who have illegally entered the country. We need to close down radical Islamic kindergartens, unions and prayer rooms. In Vienna alone, we have 150 such prayer rooms.
The FPO has long courted a controversy in Austria. It's even been referred to as far-right and neo-Nazi for its stance on migration and Islam. Despite that, a recent poll shows it's now the strongest party in Austria in terms of popular support, and it's attracting followers fast. We asked 2 commentators with distinctly opposing views to comment on the FPO's initiative.
It's danger of radical Islam in Austria, and is a danger of Islamization. So Austria is the country with the 4th largest contingent of Islamists fighting in Syria and in Iraq, in the whole of Europe. So radical Islamism is on the rise in our country. The conflict in Syria is now coming to an end. We can, for example, guarantee those people a happy future back in Syria, so that we don't have the problems that they obviously also brought with them from their country. There's a similarity in Islam and Nazism when it comes to dehumanize its opponent, its political opponents.
There's no link between the Austrian Freedom Party and the Nazis.
Actually, parallel in the use of violence against its own political enemies. So
Alexander is demonstrating what is clearly a Nazi ideology. He deliberately targets one faith over other faiths. He's deliberately misrepresenting the faith of Islam. He's got more in common with Nazism and fascism than you say about any faith. The point is very clear that if you are talking about tackling the issue of extremism and terrorism, then we should be using language that's inclusive and working together, as we do here in the United Kingdom, as we do in different parts of the world, to actually build an alliance.
Integration as such is no longer possible in Austria because we have had such a huge influx of foreign people in the last decades. I think when you're talking about a so-called peaceful Muslim population in Austria, they should prove that they are peaceful, that they are not in favor of taking our country over either by cultural or violent jihad.
They don't differentiate between the Muslims who are involved in terrorism and people like myself who are on the front line of fighting terrorism, that they just have a problem with Islam and Muslims. And that's just shameful and dangerous time for all our communities.
Meanwhile, in Yemen, the humanitarian crisis is worsening as the country struggles with a civil war against rebels backed by Saudi-led coalition and the country's official government. Our crew traveled to a refugee camp in Yemen, where starvation is fast becoming a reality.
A war is going on. Rockets and shells fall on our heads. There is nothing here. No food, no clothing, no shelter.
There is no food, no water, no bedding, nothing. We were thrown out on the street. We are not wanted anywhere. How are we supposed to survive?
My husband is sick. We can't buy him medications. We have no money. Where are we supposed to get money?
Sudan says it will extend a unilateral ceasefire with rebels in the country's warring regions for 6 months. This announcement comes after the United States said on Friday that it would lift a 20-year-old trade embargo against Sudan. And that will take place in 180 days' time if the U.S. is satisfied with Sudan's actions on human rights and political and military conflicts.
It's the end of a controversial era. The Clinton Global Initiative is closing its doors for good.
At least 32 people have been killed after a Turkish cargo jet crashed near Manas airport in Kyrgyzstan.
Positively Florida. Take a look at this. This gator had quite the audience yesterday at Circle B Bar Reserve in Polk County. Kim Joyner is sharing this video with us. Thanks, Kim. And you can see the gator slowly walking across the grass, not caring too much about all the people taking pictures and videos. As you can imagine, this gator sighting is quickly going viral. That thing is massive.
The city of St. Pete is trying to figure out what's killing birds in Coffee Pot Bayou. Many left to wonder if recent sewage spills are to blame.
The waters of Coffee Pot Bayou in St. Pete are calm and pristine, but the last few days, a not so pleasant sight. 15 dead pelicans floating to shore.
It's traumatic. We can do better.
On top of the dead birds, another 31 are very sick and are recovering at places like Seaside Seabirds Sanctuary in Indian Shores.
Birds were coming in, they were very lethargic, bloated abdomens, their eyes were swollen, a lot of symptoms that are together that we really can't put together what's happening.
The city's taking the matter seriously. While many are eager to point the finger at recent wastewater dumps in the bay, the city insists that's highly unlikely. What could be connected, a nearby fish kill linked to temperature changes.
We're going to try and get the science right, and we're going to make sure that whatever's causing this, we identify it.
Lots of water samples are being taken, and the city's contracting with area scientists to pinpoint the pelican problem. As a precaution, it's posted signs like this, urging everyone not to use the water.
I love to see how the scientists are taking action and gathering information. We need real data here. We can't just sit by and wait for the tide to wash this out.
Venezuela's unpopular president blaming cheap oil for a national crisis. Nicolas Maduro announcing Sunday his country raked in a staggering 60% less hard currency in 2016 compared to the year before. In light of the news, he says he's got a new plan to prop up oil prices, replacing a standing deal by OPEC. But whatever that plan is, the president is playing his cards close to his chest for now.
Is AI good or bad for jobs? The question truly is, are our educational systems ready for the challenges posed by AI? Schools were invented during the first industrial revolution to fill factories, essentially. And the problem right now is that there are no more factories to fill. Our schools are still primarily churning out job seekers, when what we need is for them to churn out job creators. So entrepreneurship needs to be much more seriously taught. And if we do that, yes, we're going to have increasingly something that looks like a gig economy, where everyone is building their own job. But that's just a fact of the world that we're going towards. And we just need to adapt our educational systems to that reality.
Millions of Americans face dangerous winter weather after a deadly ice storm slammed the country's midsection.
Whoa. Tornado. Right there. It's right there.
Storm chasers captured the violent weather last night near Dallas-Fort Worth. Thousands are without power.
Drone video shows a tunnel created by ice coating trees in Oklahoma. Some branches crashed down. The ice storm is blamed for at least 6 deaths. The system is creating havoc on roads and at airports. Ice and winter storm warnings are in place from New Mexico up into Iowa. Winter weather advisories stretch all the way into parts of the Northeast.
Is President-elect Trump right? Is climate change a hoax?
I can give you the best answer is three things. First of all, climate is changing. That's undisputable. The second thing is man is at an influence. I think that's undisputable as well. So climate is changing, man is in influence. I think where there's debate on it is what that influence is, what can we do about it? And as the Department of Interior, I will inherit, if confirmed, the USGS. We have great scientists there. I'm not a climate scientist expert, but I can tell you I will become a lot more familiar with it, and it'll be based on objective science. I don't believe it's a hoax. I believe we should...
You do not believe it's a hoax?
No, I believe we should be prudent to be prudent. That means I don't know definitively. There's a lot of debate on both sides of the aisle.
Well, actually, there's not a whole lot of debate now. The scientific community is virtually unanimous that climate change is real and causing devastating problems. There is the debate on this committee, but not within the scientific community.
Suffering through the third severe flood in less than 2 weeks in Argentina's Santa Fe province. In total, they've had up to 800 millimeters of rain in a month in some parts, more than the region would normally get in a year.
The rain began this morning around 6 o'clock and it rained all day.
While some residents tried to clear their homes of the rising water, others got stuck on a national highway as traffic became blocked by the flood.
I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. You are not machines, you are not cattle, you are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate, only the unloved hate, the unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!